Of my two daughters, I am the eldest, and my name is Barbara. I've always been the independent, serious one, ever since I can remember. Michelle, my sister, was the complete opposite. Michelle's laughing, Mom and Dad's adoration of her, and the steady hum of pop songs in the background filled our home with noise as I was growing up. Me, I like to work on my homework or stick my nose in a book in peaceful places. Holidays and birthdays always brought home the differences between Michelle and me. She would squeal with delight over the newest technology or stylish clothing as she tore through her presents. In contrast, I cautiously put any money I got aside. Ratch, what are you saving for now? Even if his eyes conveyed that he didn't entirely comprehend, Dad would inquire with a tinge of pride in his voice. I would respond, a laptop for studying. The computers in the library are constantly busy. I could tell they didn't understand why I didn't desire what other girls my age had. He would nod. Michelle was a tornado of fashion trends and unending demands. Have you seen the new iPhone, Mom? Everybody has one at school. I need it, she would exclaim. She would obtain it without any inquiries or help. I remember the day I finally bought my laptop. I'd saved for months, researching the best model. When I brought it home, I was bursting with pride. Look, I finally got it, I announced at dinner. Mom glanced up from her plate. That's nice, dear. Oh, Michelle, tell us about your day at the mall. And just like that, the conversation shifted. Michelle dove into a long story about her shopping trip, and my achievement faded into the background. It wasn't that they didn't love me. I knew they did in their own way, but Michelle was the sun in our family solar system, and I was a distant planet quietly orbiting on my own path. As we got older, the differences between us only grew. Michelle experimented with wild hairstyles and followed the latest fashion trends, while I stuck to my practical ponytail and comfy jeans. The library became my safe place, a quiet sanctuary where I could focus on my goals without distractions. When it came time for college, I poured all my energy into applications. I spent countless nights perfecting essays, researching scholarships, and studying for entrance exams. When I got my acceptance letter with the full scholarship, it was one of the happiest moments of my life. I ran into the kitchen, waving the letter. Mom, Dad, I got in with a full scholarship. Mom glanced up from helping Michelle with her makeup. That's nice, dear. Michelle, hold still. I'm trying to get your eyeliner just right. Dad looked over his newspaper. Good job, Barbara. We expected nothing less. Their lack of excitement hurt, but I was used to it. I went back to my room, clutching the letter. This was my chance to finally leave, to prove myself. Meanwhile, Michelle barely made it through high school. The day she brought home her poor report card, I thought our parents might finally be disappointed, but instead, they surrounded her with support. Oh, sweetie, don't worry, Mom said, stroking her hair. College isn't for everyone. You have so many other talents. Dad nodded. That's right, princess. You'll figure out your path. I couldn't believe it. Are you serious? She barely passed. Mom shot me a sharp look. Barbara, don't be mean. Your sister has other gifts. I bit my tongue and walked away. No matter what I achieved, Michelle would always be their favorite. College was a fresh start. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who appreciated hard work and ambition. I threw myself into my studies, determined to make the most of this chance. One day in my second or third year, I got a call from home. It was Michelle, her voice bubbly as always. Ratch, guess what? I'm thinking of taking some beauty courses. Mom and Dad think it's a great idea. I wanted to tell her about the research project I was working on or the summer internship I'd landed, but I knew she wouldn't care. After hanging up, I felt both frustrated and motivated. I was on my own path, and I was going to make it count. Years passed quickly. While Michelle jumped from one beauty course to the next without finishing anything, I graduated with honors. I got a job at a top company even before my diploma was dry. Moving into my own apartment was a bittersweet moment. As I unpacked my few belongings, I thought about how different my life was from Michelle's. She was still at home, pampered by our parents, while I was standing on my own, ready to take on the world. The first few months at my job were a blur. I worked longer hours than anyone else, determined to prove myself. Within a year of hard work, I was promoted to team leader. Excited, I called home to share the news. Mom picked up the phone. "Oh, Barbara, that's nice. But guess what? Michelle met the most wonderful boy. He comes from such a good family. We're all so thrilled." As she went on about Michelle's new boyfriend, my promotion seemed to disappear into the background. I hung up feeling deflated, but it only made me more determined. If my family couldn't value my achievements, I'd just have to achieve even more. I threw myself into my work with everything I had. Days turned into nights, and weekends became extra opportunities to get ahead. My hard work paid off. One promotion led to another. Before long, I became the youngest department head in the company's history. One day, Mr. Paul, the company owner, called me into his office. "Barbara, your work has been outstanding. We've never had someone rise through the ranks so quickly," he said with a smile. "Thank you, sir. I love what I do," I replied, beaming with pride. "And it shows," he said. "That's why I want to offer you something special. We have a program for top employees, a chance to buy an apartment at a significant discount. You've earned it." The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork and planning, but when I finally got the keys to my new apartment, I felt like I was floating. I decided to host a housewarming party to celebrate with the people who mattered most. Since I didn't have much furniture yet, I bought some inexpensive plastic tables and chairs and set everything up with care. Even the disposable tableware matched the decor. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine, and I was proud of it. On the day of the party, my colleagues arrived first, bringing thoughtful gifts and warm congratulations. Then my family showed up. Mom, Dad, and Michelle came in like a whirlwind. Michelle's eyes darted around the room, taking in the modest furnishings. I caught the smirk she tried to hide. As the evening went on, I noticed a pattern. Every time one of my colleagues congratulated me or brought up my accomplishments, my parents would quickly change the subject to Michelle. "Oh, that reminds me," Mom said, cutting off one of my coworkers mid-sentence. "Did Barbara tell you about Michelle's latest modeling gig? She's just so photogenic." Dad chimed in. "Yes, our Mel was born for the spotlight. Such natural talent." I saw the confused and slightly uncomfortable looks on my colleagues' faces as the focus shifted from my achievements to Michelle once again. I wanted to disappear into the floor. Michelle, on the other hand, soaked up the attention. "Oh, Mom, stop it," she'd say with a giggle, clearly enjoying every second. Finally, thankfully, my family left. The moment the door closed, my coworker Laura turned to me, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Barbara, what the hell was that?" she asked, her voice low and concerned. I shrugged, trying to brush it off. "Oh, that's just how they are." Another colleague, David, shook his head. "No, Barbara, that's not normal." "Are you okay? Do you need help?" A lump formed in my throat. Their concern was touching, but also embarrassing. "Guys, really, it's fine." "I'm used to it," I said, forcing a smile. "Who wants another drink?" As I busied myself in the kitchen, I could hear them whispering, their worry obvious. I blinked back tears, refusing to let them see how much my family's behavior had hurt me. After that disastrous housewarming, I buried myself in work again, determined to move forward. The months flew by, and slowly I turned my apartment into a home I could truly be proud of. Every piece of furniture, every splash of color on the walls was a reminder of my hard work and independence. One sunny Monday, I decided to treat myself to something I'd been saving for, a car. It wasn't flashy, just a reliable sedan to get me where I needed to go. As I drove it home, a wave of pride washed over me. This car was mine, bought with my own money, a symbol of everything I had accomplished. I hadn't planned to tell my family, but news spread fast. That evening, my phone rang, and Michelle's cheerful voice came through the speaker. "Ratch, I heard you bought a car." "That's nice," she said, though her tone made it clear she didn't mean it. "You know, you're really doing things the hard way. All this working and saving, it's so unnecessary." Her words made my stomach tighten. "What do you mean?" I asked. She said, as if explaining something, "Obviously, the main job of a woman is to marry properly. Find a man who will take care of you and give you everything you need. Why work yourself to death when you could have it all handed to you?" I was speechless for a moment. Was she serious? "Michelle, that's not how I see things. I want to earn what I have. I'm proud of what I've accomplished." She laughed, a light, tinkling sound that grated on my nerves. "Oh, Ratch, always the difficult one. Well, you'll see. I'll show you how it's done." Before I could respond, Michelle had hung up. I stared at the phone, feeling a mix of anger and disbelief. How could we see life so differently? A few months later, I got my answer. Michelle called, her voice full of excitement. "Barbara, you'll never guess. I'm getting married. His name is Nicholas, and he's absolutely loaded. His parents are paying for everything. The wedding's going to be stunning." As she went on about the dresses, flowers, and guest list, I felt an emptiness inside me. This was what she had been working toward, her idea of success. The wedding day came faster than I expected. I stood in a grand hall, surrounded by glittering guests, feeling out of place. Michelle looked radiant in her designer gown, and our parents couldn't stop beaming with pride. I sipped champagne, trying to swallow the bitterness building inside me. Had my parents ever looked at me with such pride? Had they ever been this happy about anything I'd achieved? As the night went on, I felt more and more like a stranger. Michelle thrived in the spotlight, charming the guests and soaking up the attention. Our parents introduced themselves to everyone, proudly announcing, "We're the parents of the bride." On my way home, driving my modest car back to my modest apartment, I couldn't help but wonder if I had made the wrong choices. Was Michelle right? Had I chosen the harder path for nothing? Dad nodded quickly. "Of course, Princess, anything you want." I stood there, watching this strange scene unfold, feeling like I had stepped into an alternate reality. This couldn't be how life was supposed to work, could it? As the days passed, Michelle's tantrums didn't stop. She'd cry for hours, then scream, then demand expensive gifts to make herself feel better. Our parents, eager to keep her happy, gave her everything she asked for. One evening, after another meltdown, I couldn't hold back anymore. "Maybe," I said carefully, "Michelle should consider getting a job. It might help her appreciate the value of money and give her something to focus on." The room fell silent, then all at once chaos erupted. Michelle's face twisted in anger. "A job. Like you, slaving away every day like some peasant." She spat, bursting into tears. She ran upstairs, slamming her door so hard the whole house shook. Before I could even process what had happened, Mom and Dad turned on me. "How dare you?" Mom hissed. Your sister is going through a terrible time, and you suggest she lower herself to your level. I didn't mean it like that. I tried to explain, but they weren't listening. Get out, Dad said, his voice cold. Get out of this house right now. Mom pointed at the door. Out, and don't come back until you can be supportive of your sister. In a daze, I grabbed my purse and left. When I walked into my apartment, my sanctuary, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Sadness at being rejected by my family, anger at their blindness to Michelle's faults, and oddly, a sense of relief. For the first time, I saw how toxic my family had been all these years. Life has a funny way of surprising you when you least expect it. Just days after the blow-up with my family, I got news that left me stunned. I had won a company contest. The prize, a 5-month, all-expenses-paid cruise around the world. In a moment of weakness, or maybe hope, I decided to call my parents. Maybe this good news could heal the rift between us. Mom, Dad, you won't believe it. I won a cruise around the world. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Then my mother's cold voice broke through. Barbara, how can you be so selfish? Your sister is going through a terrible time, and you're bragging about vacations. I felt like I'd been slapped. I'm not bragging, I said quietly. I just thought. But Mom cut me off. If you had any decency, you'd give that ticket to Michelle, she said sharply. She needs a change of scenery. You can stay home and work like you always do. Something inside me snapped. Years of frustration poured out all at once. No, I said firmly. I won this trip. I earned it. I'm not giving it up because Michelle made bad choices. I'm going. The next few weeks were a blur as I got ready. I packed my bags, sorted out everything at work, and on the day of departure, I did something I'd never done before. I turned off my phone. For the first time in years, I felt free. The cruise was everything I had dreamed of. I watched stunning sunsets in Malta, explored ancient ruins in Romania, and walked through the busy streets of Singapore. For 4 incredible months, I was just Barbara, not the responsible older sister, not the family disappointment, just me. But all good things must end. When the ship docked back home, reality hit. I turned on my phone expecting a flood of messages, but there were only a few missed calls from my parents. Feeling lighter than I had in years, I headed home. As I approached my apartment, I heard noises inside. My heart pounded. Had someone broken in? I opened the door cautiously, and there she was, Michelle. She was sprawled on my couch, surrounded by shopping bags and empty takeout containers. Michelle, I gasped. What are you doing here? She looked up, barely reacting to my sudden arrival. Oh, you're back, finally. I stood frozen, my key still in my hand. How did you get in here? She rolled her eyes. Don't be dramatic, Barbara. I used the spare keys you left with Mom and Dad. I needed a change of scenery. Everything at home reminded me of. She trailed off. I stared at her, speechless. This was too much. I needed air. I'm going to the store, I muttered, grabbing my car keys and heading outside. But when I got to the parking lot, my car was gone. Panic set in as I called my parents. Mom, I asked, where's my car? Her voice was overly cheerful. Barbara dear, how was your trip? I cut straight to the point. Where's my car? There was a pause, and then Dad came on the line. We sold it. The world seemed to spin. What? Michelle needed cheering up, Mom said casually, as if it was no big deal. We used the money to take her shopping and to the spa. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What I was hearing felt unreal. That was my car. You had no right. Dad's voice cut in, stern and dismissive. Now, Barbara, we're family. What's yours is ours. Don't be selfish. Something inside me snapped. Years of frustration, resentment, and anger poured out. Selfish? You stole my car, invaded my home, and I'm selfish. I want my money back now. Their reaction was instant and harsh. They called me heartless, ungrateful, a disappointment. The words stung, but for the first time, they didn't break me. I hung up the phone, marched back into my apartment, and found Michelle still lounging on my couch, completely unaware of the storm inside me. "Get out," I said, my voice quiet but firm. Michelle looked up, shocked. "What? Get out now." She tried to argue, to manipulate me like she always did, but this time I didn't budge. For the first time, I put myself first. The next day, I hired a lawyer and sued my parents for the value of my car. They were furious, threatening to disown me and cut me out of their will, but I didn't back down. The case went to court. It was exhausting, laying out years of emotional manipulation and financial abuse for strangers to hear. But in the end, justice was served. The judge ruled in my favor, and my parents were forced to sell their house to repay me. They moved into a small apartment, telling anyone who would listen that I was the villain who had ruined their lives. But for once, their words couldn't touch me. As I drove home in my new car, fresh from the dealership, I felt lighter. For the first time in my life, I was truly free from their expectations, their manipulation, and their control. I made the difficult decision to cut off all contact with my family. The first few months were tough. There were moments of doubt and loneliness, but slowly, I began building a life on my own terms. I poured myself into work and rose quickly through the ranks. I made new friends who valued me for who I was, not what I could do for them. I traveled, picked up new hobbies, and discovered things that brought me joy. Most importantly, I learned to love myself, to value my strength, determination, and worth. Now as I sit in my office, looking out over the city skyline, I can't help but smile. The path I chose wasn't easy, but it was mine. I built this life, step by step, decision by decision, and I wouldn't change a thing.